Thank you for joining us on the Look Up Mindset podcast, where real stories of resilience, transformation, and adventure come to life. I'm your host, author, and storyteller, Heidi Siefkas. Each episode, we dive into the journeys of sheroes, heroes, and badasses who faced life's toughest moments and chose to rise. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's be inspired together. Welcome to the Look Up Mindset podcast. I'm your host, author Heidi Siefkas. In today's episode, we have a special guest, Amy Becker, and the episode is entitled The Tidal Wave of Loss. As is customary in this community, we allow the guests to introduce themselves because no one knows themselves better than yours truly. So the floor is yours, Amy Becker.
Thanks, Heidi. Thanks for having me. I live in a small town, Holman, Wisconsin. Currently, I am a senior improvement advisor, nurse at Amplify Health System by Gunderson. If you work long enough as a nurse, they give you the senior title, apparently. So I have the privilege of teaching teams and working with individuals to have continuous improvement throughout our workday, which leads to better patient outcomes. And so much more just for that better overall patient experience in our healthcare systems. A fun note, I do also still help coach track and field for our local high schools. So enjoy that very much since I myself have been a lifelong avid runner. And in the last 9 years, I've been toying around with triathlons. I have two daughters, Sydney and Claire, and we'll talk a little bit about Sydney today. And then Claire, my youngest, attends the University of Minnesota Duluth, and she is currently studying public health. And she also runs for their cross country and track and field team. And this March, it'll be 25 years that I'm married to my husband, Marty.
I met Amy in junior high. And so that means that we've been friends for probably 30 years, plus or minus. And when I started the Look Up book project, I sent out an announcement looking for real life sheroes, heroes, and badasses. And this went out to friends, family, social media connections, colleagues. And Amy didn't volunteer her story at first, but I was about halfway through the project and I asked her if she would be open sharing her story. So she finally accepted, and her story is heroic, embodies resilience and life transformation, or what I would consider family transformation. And so this is where the storytelling is going to begin. Like any good movie, book, or series, you have to throw people into the first act. So we need to set the scene. What was normal? Where was that? When was it? Kind of paint the picture for us, Amy.
Well, this brings us back to June 3rd, 2022. So seems like yesterday to me. It was just a typical day at our little house. And my youngest daughter, Claire, was a sophomore in high school. And Sydney was living in Milwaukee. She was 22 at the time, my oldest, living with her boyfriend, Marcus. And the plan was for Sydney to be home at our house within, give or take 8 to 10 hours, because we were all going to put on our matching shirts and go and watch Claire run at the state meet for track and field at UW La Crosse. Sydney was very excited because herself had been to the state meet several times. In fact, every year. She was a phenomenal runner. They used to call her the pit bull. She just had a lot of passion. And so just going to bed, and I've got everybody's shirts laid out, ready to go, waiting for Sid to come in the morning. And then we get this knock on the door. It's like 3 a.m. The funny thing about trauma, folks, is your memory, your timeline is very gray. And it's probably different every time somebody asks. So you just do your best to pull out what you can recall, right? And we get a knock on the door, and of course, I'm kind of a baby in the middle of the night. So I wake up my husband and have him go answer the door. And so I'm thrown on a bathrobe, and he answers the door, and there's two police officers, a male and a female. And, there's sometimes people get in car accidents next to our ditch and road. We thought maybe something like that. And I'm still kind of waking up and gathering my thoughts. And I could hear the officer ask my husband, "Are you the father of Sydney Becker?" And he said, "Yes." And then again, this is very gray. But what I recall is, well, she's passed away. And it could have been other words, you guys. It's just like I can't quite recall, because it's not like the movies where, yeah, they're screaming and crying in sort of this tantrum-like environment, but it's like everything just stops, and like your skin hurts and your hair hurts, and you're just in this mindset of what? Nothing's connecting quite yet. So I have to hear this a few more times. And then I finally kind of got it when my husband fell on the floor. And if you know my husband, he's a very quiet, kind, keep it all together kind of a dude. And then I finally realized what happened. And then he said, "How?" And we still just weren't understanding what's going on. And I just kept staring at my husband like, am I sleeping? Am I awake? It's just like this weird shock, if you could call it anything, right? And we, took it all in. They were giving us all these phone numbers to call. Here, you call Milwaukee. Here's the detective that you can call and talk about the case. Here's the medical examiner's phone number. I'm not writing anything down. I am just seriously standing there like I have zero idea where I am and what's going on. And my husband's somehow gathering all that information. And then they leave. And then I had to ask him again, what's going on? And he kept having to, repeatedly tell me. And it was just, the worst pain you'll ever experience in your life. And we just stared at each other and we cried and hugged each other. But we sat there and said, what do we do with our child who is in bed downstairs? What do we do with Claire, who is in love with her sister? They have the greatest relationship. Sydney always promised her she would be there for her forever, right? And our family was very, very close. So we're still not understanding the why. So anyway, I know my husband ended up calling the detective and getting the story, but we hemmed and hawed on what to do with Claire. Do we wake her up? Do we let her run? Do we let her ruin running the rest of her life? Do we associate this nightmare with what she loves? So we didn't know what to do.
This is what I think about your story that's so powerful. It's that you're grieving or starting to process right now, and you're making a decision as to how to protect or not protect Claire for her future.
Yeah, Heidi, it's just interesting how different instincts kick in while you're dealing with this horror. So we decided not to tell her and got up, and my husband had to leave. He was so upset. He was kicking and breaking things, and I was just really trying to keep cool. And then got Claire over to the school, and good luck, we'll see you in a little bit, kind of a deal, and kind of let her go. And then we're like, we don't know if we made the right decision, and so later we asked Claire, and she said we made the right decision. But there's no book that says how to raise your children. And then chapter 5, when one dies, this is how you handle the situation at hand. There's no guidance for that. We just kind of go with what you do to survive, right? And then so we had to call. He went and drove to his parents to tell them, because he was very worried about his parents. They're elderly. They're doing really well, but he was very worried about that. And then I had to call my parents. And as you can imagine, it's phone dropping, it's screaming, it's crying. It's all the uncomfortableness surrounding that. So we do our best to get dressed, find the darkest sunglasses, drive our asses to that meet. We sit up high in the bleachers watching, and she finds us and says hello and everything. And very shortly after the start of the meet, she said, well, where is Sydney? I said, well, I not quite here yet. I didn't know what to do, you guys. I just was lost on what to do. And all I kept thinking was, I'm on the highest bleacher, right? How do I jump and end this? How do I just get out? My husband went and slept in the truck because he couldn't look at anybody. And then several times throughout the meet, Claire asked us, and we finally said, she got in a fight with Marcus, which is true. And she's not going to make it. So you just go and do the best you can, honey. And she didn't run that great, and I knew deep down she knew something was wrong. I just knew it. We went home. Marty and I are walking in the house, and then Claire comes up from downstairs and says, okay, tell me what happened. Where is Sydney? Just what's going on? She knew something was up. So we had to sit her down together, and my husband told her because I couldn't. And the rawness and the vulnerability and the pain that came from her was something a mother should never see. It was screaming and running in the yard and terrified and throwing up and lost and scared. And we just did our best to comfort her. We slept together in the living room on a big blanket for like a week. I followed her around constantly in fear that she would do something to herself, that something would happen because she's so overwhelmed. And that went on for a long time. And so wake, right? Funeral, all that stuff happened. It's a blur. It's a nightmare. It's a joke. I should have been picking out my daughter's wedding dress, not her coffin. And that's raw and it's terrible. And I didn't love the jokes that the guy at the funeral home was saying. I think he was trying to keep it light because he does this for a living. But I just thought, we're not ready. Had the beautiful support of Marty's sister, Jeannie, who could be that person of reason to help make those decisions. And ultimately, Claire had to chose to pick out her sister's coffin. And even saying it to you today, Heidi, and to all of you, it feels very not real. First year is just hell. Second year is what? Like this reality. And I think this year's just been numbing. It's not like the 5 stages of grief if you have an illness yourself. That's not true for grief when you lose somebody. So, I could go on and on and on, but it was hard. Her boyfriend was there. I tried to be supportive for him, but she got in an argument with him that night over some friends they had some disagreements on. She said she was going to take her life. He left anyway, came back and found her. It's really, really hard for us to want to talk to him and want to be part of his life. And we are navigating and working through that the best that we can. But that's kind of where that sits.
Was there anything that supported you through that time that you could advise other people to help? Because I know you've alluded to it, that people don't know what to say, or they say something stupid, or they do exactly the wrong thing. And I know that there is no book for this.
Yeah, there's a couple things. One thing is reach out to the people that understand you, know you. And it's like really looking into who is your person, who are your people that can say, I'm going alongside you with this. And I think what's really important when I teach every day, I really want to put a lot of emphasis on everybody has stuff. every one of us has something that we're carrying. Most people that know me, Amy's happy-go-lucky. She's funny. She gets a crowd going. She's a lot of fun. But how do we understand people better knowing that everybody has something and everyone carries something that you can't see, right? So it's not about comparing tragedies. Often people will not share things with me because they think they're comparing. And it's not about that. It's about understanding that we're all navigating through something. And the way that we show up for one another can either create safety or cause more harm. So I get to teach a lot of new nurses that. I get to teach people that. And I think that's important is how do we serve those who serve others? And I think about Simon Sinek is a great advocate of that messaging. But Heidi, what's been helping me is to help others. It's truly effective. It is a bucket filler. And with your mantra, Heidi, not everything for me seems positive because I didn't have a choice in this. It's more about me staying present. So with Heidi's book, I'm trying to really emphasize look up and look around and live in the moment because tomorrow's not promised. Say hello to people in the store. And if they don't say hello back, I just assume they have headphones. Assume the best in everyone.
When I asked you to participate, I knew that this was going to be it. The most difficult part of it was going to find what's the upside, because look up is about being in the moment. The only thing that you can control is breathing and being present. And then when I say find the upside, a lot of people say, come on, what is the upside of anyone passing and not having them in your life? And from experience, I lost my partner. It takes time and it may never come because there's always that loss. I had 12 years with Brian, and I consider myself very, very fortunate to have had a love of my life for 12 years. But a partner is different than a child. So I get it, that it maybe isn't the perfect connection because you, your family aren't there, or maybe never will, because grief walks with you for the remainder of your life.
And you nailed it, Heidi, because looking up doesn't erase the pain, but it's allowed me to live alongside it. And that is very genuine. And that is why this is helpful. And we have such a great friendship, you and I. And unfortunately, we have a lot of friends that have had a lot of trauma in their life. And so we get each other.
So what does present look for you now? What's the new normal?
Well, ironically, Heidi, the new normal is podcasts. I was always such a competitive with my watch runner. I had to have a certain pace and all this. And then after I lost my sweetheart, I have completely changed the way that I run, and I appreciate it very, very differently because sometimes I might just walk the first mile and listen to a podcast. It's just taught me to slow down, enjoy the moment. Maybe a long run turned into a nice calm walk, and just do what you feel fits you in the moment. And it's okay to change your mind. That's the best part.
You mentioned that you're a trainer and that you do talk about Sydney. Could you expand upon what part of your training you talk about the story and how you may frame it differently than most people have heard it before?
Yeah, well, ironically, Heidi, yesterday I helped facilitate a very important meeting surrounding our behavioral health patients, right? They're such a vulnerable population, and I have a lot more understanding and empathy for a lot of different folks now. And it's just really about putting yourself in their shoes. And really, when I teach to folks about, in this meeting particularly, the word suicide came up 20,000 times. And I kept trying to stay focused. Amy, you got to get them to the desired outcome. You got to get them to where we need to be for this to be a successful meeting. And Sydney came up. She always pops in. I think it's her doing her own thing, but it's about the patient. You know, how are we going to think differently to care for these folks? Right. And I just really, really teach with the patient at the center with a caveat. I call it the Amy Becker caveat, where I think we have it wrong sometimes. We have got to start taking care of ourselves first. Holy Hannah, especially nurses, people in healthcare. And then take care of each other. It's about building relationships and learning from each other, take care of each other. Then the patient can't lose. So Sydney comes in and out of everything that I teach and everything that I facilitate, that we are human beings first. Then the rest happens. Leave your title at the door. And that's just kind of how she sort of vacillates in and out of the teachings and the education that I do. And it was never really planned. It just kind of fell into place. And it's gotten really good feedback, and people keep asking for me to help facilitate their teams. So that's my goal.
Have there been any things that you, Claire, and Marty have done together to honor not only Sydney, but also people that are perhaps feeling fragile in their own mental health?
I think Claire clearly spelled it out when she changed her major to public health, and just really looking at the community differently and understanding where those needs are. And my husband and I volunteer like crazy. I really enjoy doing that. There is a half marathon, a local half marathon that we've participated in several years. In fact, I ran it with Sydney, and it's for suicide awareness. So we donate to that every year and encourage people to sign up. It's such a great cause. And I also, in lieu of like Christmas gifts for all my coworkers and friends, I donate to Suicide Foundation every year from our family. So it's talk about it. I love it when people talk about Sydney. I think understanding that we're just going through it together, and there isn't something that we get over. I hope that everybody just understands that it comes and goes when it wants.
When I heard your story, the only way that I could express it was with the tides of the ocean, that they ebb and flow. But then sometimes the tidal wave comes where there's no stopping it, and you just got to take a pause on real life and face it head on.
January 9th on her birthday, where she would have been 26. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to also, I was thinking about this earlier, Heidi. It's not one of your questions today, but also understanding when I see Sydney's friends get married and I see them having babies, I'm so happy for them, but it's so painful. It's so hard. And one of her friends just had a baby yesterday, and he's beautiful. And those things that you don't necessarily think will trigger, it's just triggers everywhere, right? So it's like, be careful what you say around really anybody, because you just don't know, again, what stuff they're carrying. So be cautious, be kind. So yeah, that's kind of been the new thing. I think that's been kind of eaten away, is seeing her friends' families grow, which I'm so happy for them. They're so wonderful, but it is hard to come to or realize that that's not going to happen for Sid.
Milestones, holidays,
yeah, right,
are a little bit different when you've faced trauma.
Yep.
So
for sure.
Your story impacts more than just your training classes, your immediate connections now being on this community. How could people learn more about your story or help out with the mini donut?
There's several foundations across the country. Look for your local ones, see how you can participate, whether that's a run, walk, skip, jump, or crawl. It doesn't really matter, but get involved. and just be a good listener and reach out to people that you think need a little extra, because not everybody's reaching out for help.
Keep your eyes and ears peeled because grief appears in different manners.
Yeah.
It can be overly comical. It can be sulking. It can be withdrawal. It could be self-medicating. So, yeah, thank you for sharing your story once again. In the book, it's going to be able to reach thousands, but in this community, we're hoping to spread it and a ripple effect of people that enjoy taking runs, walks. Even, well, I don't think you can swim. Can you? And listen to a podcast yet?
Actually, you can because you download and yep. They got fancy stuff for the pool now, Heidi.
So maybe there's someone out there that's swimming and training for a triathlon and listening to this story about Amy Becker, her family, and Sydney. This is the Look Up Mindset. If you liked this story, please subscribe, share it with someone that you know that may need a dose of inspiration. And I end every podcast with a toast. Here's to looking up. Ciao! Well, that's a wrap on today's episode of the Look Up Mindset podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If the story inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a boost. And remember, look up is always at your fingertips, whenever and wherever you need it. Until next time, here's to looking up.